I'm at the King Edward Hotel. Normally I'd be down there somewhere filming, but city noise, construction. The King Edward Hotel stands on the site of the first jail in Toronto, and it is also therefore the site of Toronto's first execution. That story goes a little bit like this. One day in October of 1798, two men, one named John Sullivan and the other named Michael Flannery, were drinking at a local pub, and they ran out of money before they ran out of thirst. And so Flannery, who was a printer, had the brilliant idea of trying to forge a note. And so he created a note for a couple of shillings and tried to pass it off at the bartender. Shockingly, a note that was, the 19th century equivalent of Monopoly money, only less convincing, was very quickly picked up. And arrest warrants were sworn out for the two men. Flannery lit out for the U.S. and was never seen from again. So it was Sullivan who was caught, left, taken into jail to face the charges. The jail at the time was brand new, and it could hold a grand total of 3 people. So not a big affair. Crime was not a big thing at the time. But Sullivan was charged with counterfeiting, which was one of roughly 120 crimes at the time, which were punishable by death. The judge at his trial commanded Flannery to spend his last few days in prayer, praying to God Almighty for forgiveness for a wretched life, and that God would have mercy on his poor soul. So the date of his execution was set for October 11, 1798. Scaffold was constructed in front of the jail down there, and people came out to attend because public executions at that time, executions were public at the time, and they drew very large crowds. Families would often come out, bring the children, because it was thought that watching some wretched soul meet his end would be educational. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, there was a bit of a problem. Since Toronto or York as it was at the time, had never had an execution before, they didn't have an executioner. And while hundreds were willing to come out and watch Sullivan breathe his last for their edification and education, no one was willing to do the job. However, in one of the 2 cells beside Sullivan was a man by the name of McKnight. And McKnight agreed to do the deed, but only on the condition that he got a pardon at £100 cash. For those of you keeping track, they're releasing a criminal and paying him £100 to kill a man for the crime of writing out a note for approximately, less than 50 cents. So, execution being a bit complicated affair, and McKnight being very inexperienced, the execution went, let's say, poorly. Sullivan was brought up to the scaffold. The noose was put around his neck. He was asked if he had any last words. And the lever was pulled, and Sullivan tumbled to the ground very much alive. So they picked him up, dusted him off, put the noose around his neck, asked him if he had any last words, pulled the lever, and Sullivan tumbled to the ground again, very much alive. So they dusted him off a 3rd time, or again, and then they pulled him up to the scaffold, and they put the noose around his neck, and they asked him if he had any last words. And these words were recorded. He said, "For God's sakes, McKnight, I hope you get it right this time." And McKnight did.